Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network, home to podcasts that look at popular culture through a married lens, an award-winning Star Wars show, podcasts dedicated to the films of 1994 and A24, and much more. You can find them all on thenerdparty.com and on Twitter at JoinNerdParty. So today is our 160th episode. I don't know what we've been talking about for all this time, but for the next two episodes I won't be joined by Dallas. He is currently vacationing in India, and I'll be sharing the show with horror blogger Kim Morrison. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Alright, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure to get you on for these next two episodes. But before we kind of dive into the show, what can you kind of tell listeners about yourself and what got you into scary movies?
Well, I write mainly for a website called That's Not Current, which is just a pop culture website where we kind of a little bit more niche, I guess, and I've ended up kind of covering mainly horror remakes on it, and I do some things for other websites as well. I did something recently for Screen Queens about ginger snaps, which was pretty cool. I've been into horror since I was quite little, actually. I think I'm quite lucky in the fact that my mum and dad are big horror fans as well, so I maybe got away with watching a lot more stuff as a kid than most people would have. So yeah, I've been watching it basically kind of since I was at primary school, so it's been a love of mine for ages.
Horror is such a kind of broad spectrum. Is there any sort of genres within horror that kind of stand out for you? Sort of the slasher, or there seems to be this trend these days of horror movies where everyone falls over themselves to tell you it's not actually a horror movie.
Yeah, I think probably I feel like slashers is my favourite one. I think so many of them kind of came out when I was properly getting into horror and like at high school and stuff, and ones that I could actually go and see in the cinema where it like made a huge difference. So I think they're probably my favourite, but I am partial to like a good werewolf or a vampire one as well. Those are some of my favourites.
And so you got to pick today's topic and obviously for next week as well, and we're going to be looking at the Scream movies. What made you kind of pick the Scream movies out of all the topics in the world that you could pick from? Why did you gravitate towards this one?
I think the first two Scream movies certainly were ones that I watched on repeat, like when I was at high school. I watched them so much. I mean, I was thinking about it the other day, like the first one came out when I was 9, so I don't imagine I watched it when it came out, but I do know by the time Scream 3 came out in like 2011 that I had seen the first two, because I remember being like obsessed with the trailer and really excited about it. So I just think the first two films definitely were so important and like kind of shaping my like horror tastes, and they were just ones that I watched over and over again. They're such a great mix of a bit scary and a bit funny and good music and a bit geeky, and I just loved them, so I thought they would be a good one to talk about.
Do you remember when you kind of first watched any sort of the Scream movies for the first time?
I remember my dad used to tape films off Sky for me, and he would bring them out on like a videotape, and we would watch them. And I remember him taping Scream for me, probably like as long as it took a film to get on Sky in those days, so maybe like a couple of years, and he brought it out and we watched it, me and him and my mum together, probably so that they could make sure it wasn't too horrific for me to be watching. But yeah, I remember sitting down to like watch it and being so excited, and at that point like I didn't know who the killers were, so it was a total like fresh watch, and it was amazing. So yeah, I think that's why it's stuck with me. It was a exciting one to watch for the first time.
I can't actually ever remember the first time I watched it. I think I was maybe the same as you. I watched it on sort of a VHS tape recorded from Sky, and it really stuck with me as well. I thought it was just so good. It's so exciting that I mean, I was probably about maybe 11 when I first watched it, so what was it, 96 it came out, so yeah, probably a couple of years on to that. But I always remembered Scream 2, watching that for the first time. And I remember being really, really desperate to see it because it had Sarah Michelle Gellar in it. So I was maybe really mad for Buffy at the time. Yeah. And I thought, you know what? I really want to see this movie. I really liked the first Scream movie. And I remembered being in like a barbecue, like about 30 miles from home. and I kept trying to push my parents, like, oh, we should maybe head home now, because I knew it was on Sky Movies that night, and I really wanted to get home, watch this movie that had Sarah Michelle Gellar in it. And I saw that one, and then I never really saw 3 and 4. 3, when I rewatched it for this, I don't ever remember watching it or having the opportunity to. And then for 4, I somehow never got around to watching it at the cinema, so it was really good to sort of revisit 3 and 4 for the first time. Watch 3 and 4 for the first time and revisit the first 2. And yeah, it's been a really exciting topic to dive into. I was so excited when you picked this one.
That's good.
So with this one, like, I was like a horror fan. Like, these movies obviously stick out for sort of the self-references to, you know, other movies that have gone on in the horror genre, all those kind of tie-ins, even the casting into sort of other movies. Is that an element that kind of appeals to you as sort of a horror fan when you think about the Scream movies, that they live within sort of the horror genre? Like, these characters might be quite relatable for folk like yourself.
Yeah, I think it's quite a fun one, because even like rewatching it for this, there was so many references. I mean, I think Scream 1 probably has the most references in it. There was so many I had missed, like, as a kid, of just films that I didn't even know were films, like The Town That Dreaded Sundown or like Prom Night were ones I hadn't heard of. So it's fun to watch them and yeah, just catch all the little references. I think especially the character like Randy, like kind of everything he says is just my favourite thing in the world. I love just how horror geeky everyone is, like Billy and Stu as well, like even though they're the bad guys, they're like total horror geeks and they're always making references, and it's just fun to like catch them and be like, yeah, I understand that reference, like I totally get that, and that maybe people who aren't super into horror wouldn't catch them all. So it's a definite level of like horror geekery that makes them more fun to watch.
Is it one of those ones that kind of makes it easier for repeat viewings as well, where you can sit round and watch it and go like 10 years later, oh, I get that niche reference now, or something that was just you pass over when you're like 10 or 15 or even 25, and then like you watch some sort of channel one day, you watch this horror movie and go, wait, is that a tie back to Scream? Do you ever sort of get that kick?
Yeah, it was even like recently I watched Nightmare on Elm Street for like the 100th time, but I'm aware that they're obviously both Wes Craven, but even the bit where like Johnny Depp's character like sneaks in Nancy's window, and then you're like, oh, that bit in Scream is totally a reference to that section. Like it's there's loads of bits that you like put together. Or even I watched the original When a Stranger Calls a couple of weeks ago for the first time, and even the whole like first opening section of Scream is very When a Stranger Calls, or the bit where Sydney sort of, when she's getting chased around her house, she runs out the door and she runs like right into a policeman and screams, like that as well is very the opening of When a Stranger Calls. So it is fun to, I feel like it would take me like another 10 years to probably catch every single reference that's in it. It's so it's exciting to kind of go back and catch them.
I suppose it's always been odd for me because I'm not a big horror fan. Like, I catch the odd one here and there at the cinema, but like I don't think I've ever seen any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Halloween, I've only seen like the first 5 minutes of 3, so I'm watching Halloween H2O for next week's episode, and I've not watched any of the other Halloween movies. So there's like so many references that completely go over my head.
Yeah.
Unless it's like screaming right in my face, I'm like, oh yeah, I get that one. And then for the rest of the time, I can kind of go, yeah, that's probably a reference to something, but I couldn't ever tell you what it is. It could be the most mainstream thing in the world, and it's probably going to pass me by.
Yeah, no, it is fun. Like I said, even just watching it this time, there were ones that I just kind of caught that I'd never noticed before, and it's like, yeah, it's definitely a fun kind of game to play.
Like Kevin Williamson, the scriptwriter, he seems like someone that's truly versed in horror, as well as Wes Craven. Do you know how much of that was kind of these horror references were in the script, or kind of maybe perhaps improvised on the day by someone like Wes Craven, like how the person comes up the ladder and into the window? Yeah, I'm not sure actually. I obviously know that the kind of thing that they were aiming for with the first one was to sort of like revitalize the slasher genre, because that kind of hadn't been done for ages, kind of since like the 80s with like Halloween and the 70s with Halloween and the 80s with Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff. But
yeah, I do know that like they were obviously trying to be very self-referential and exist in a world where people were very aware of horror movies and weren't trying to do stupid things like run up the stairs or put the chain on the door. But it kind of shows that when you get stuck in that situation, even if you have like the knowledge of the rules, it kind of goes a bit out the window anyway. So yeah,
I think, like, and I always find sort of those references, like, they seem to kind of grow as sort of the movies kind of went along. That, I don't know if it was me, but it felt like the more they got into the series, like, everything became kind of references and tiebacks to something else, where it almost felt like the first one could sort of, it was sort of sprinkled a bit more. I don't know why, maybe it's just me, but I felt it got more as the kind of series went on, and sort of they could tie into, like, threequels and, you know, sequels and so on a lot more.
yeah, I think yeah, like I think the first one, I feel like it does have a lot more like subtle references, and I do feel like there's loads in there, but they're not as blatantly obvious. But by the time you get to the fourth one, they're sort of dealing with a world where people are aware of horror films, but also a world where people are aware of like the stab films and the actual real Woodsboro murders. So it's like a few different layers of being aware, and they know that the rules are an important thing. So maybe the whole the whole like film class kind of scenes in Scream 4 are maybe a bit more on the nose, whereas the first one was maybe a little bit more subtle about it.
And I think a lot of the characters are, as you say, kind of quite relatable to horror fans and sort of maybe geeks in general like me. Like the one in sort of the second one where they're having that argument about there's never been a good sequel, and then they all start throwing around these different movies and names and stuff. It felt very relatable, not even just as a sort of horror fan, but being people that were kind of into the film in general.
Yeah, definitely. I think like Randy and Kirby from the fourth one are the type of people that I wish I had went to high school with. Like in the Scream world, everyone seems to be really well versed in horror films and things, and yeah, it's probably not exactly like that, but yeah, I do I mean, as a horror fan, I feel like I have arguments quite a lot about which horror films are good and which are bad, and I'm constantly defending my terrible taste in horror films. So yeah, I do feel like arguments like that are probably pretty realistic.
You were kind of talking about like this sort of film look to kind of revitalize the slasher genre. Do you think that the movies did that, or did they sort of become kind of victims of their own success in a way that it revitalized it and then maybe killed it a little bit, perhaps by the third one?
Yeah, I think it did quite a good job of sort of bringing it back, because there was a lot of kind of films that came directly after Scream that were like apart from Halloween, because that was a sequel obviously, but there was a lot of like kind of original slasher stories with like new killers and new backstories and stuff. So I think that was quite exciting, and they were a lot of the ones that I watched as a teenager again, because they were kind of coming out and they were available. But yeah, I do think obviously by the time it got to 3, I mean 3 is not the best film anyway, but I think I think any kind of horror film that gets sucked into that let's make more sequels than we probably should thing can maybe be slightly damaging to the like subgenre that they're trying to promote.
I always thought of like with the kind of the Scream movies, like those were sort of the originals, and I think people like even sort of being a kid of the 90s and then into the 2000s, that I was talking with someone the other day about kind of Scream, and they were like, "Oh, are you doing anything kind of podcast?" You know, it's like, "Oh, I'm doing the Scream movies. I'm just sort of rewatching them just now," and they weren't sort of familiar with them. And I was like, "Oh, you'll surely remember Ghostface," and they were like, "Nah," like they were like maybe 8 years younger than me, didn't know them. I was like, "Right, trust me, like this, like Ghostface was like huge at the time. Everyone dressed like him for Halloween. Everyone had the mask, the glow in the dark mask. Like Scream just exploded in a way I don't think anyone could. That you could probably have the costume and have never sort of seen the films."
Yeah, I think it's just I think it's impressive that they managed to create like such a iconic killer, because I feel like a lot of those kind of slashers that came out at the time, they're like the killers haven't really kind of survived the test of time, whereas I think it's quite interesting with Scream because especially because the killers are different in every film. It's not like Michael Myers or Jason where it's the same killer kind of carrying forward. It's purely kind of based on the costume, and the whole Ghostface thing is just the costume and the get-up, like how scary that was. So I think it's pretty cool that they managed to create this kind of lasting character from that.
What did you kind of think of that? Like, I never sort of clicked with it and never really thought about it until I rewatched it, sort of more as kind of, obviously the last time I watched these movies was kind of maybe early teens. Was that obviously you had, Ghostface, but it was someone that was always changing, and they had odd or interesting reasons for it kind of embracing the costume. Did you ever have a sort of favourite person behind Ghostface, and why did that person kind of stand out for you?
I think that it's hard because I feel like the reveal of the killers in Scream 1 was so shocking. I think it's like slasher killers are usually like this evil kind of person like on the outskirts that has a reason to be killing people, and it's not really like usually like someone who's just in their group of friends. So I think the first one was really shocking, but there's something about Scream 2 that I just really enjoyed, because I think by that point you kind of expected the killers to sort of be one of Sydney's friends or her boyfriend or something. So the reveal of Mickey being one of the killers wasn't too outrageous. But then when the other killer was revealed to be like Billy's mum, that was really cool, because we'd obviously heard about her in the first film about how she'd run off, but we'd never actually sort of seen her. And the character like Debbie Salt was always on the outskirts, like she was there the whole time kind of in front of your face, but you didn't know the connection until like Sydney came face to face with her. So I really liked that one because it kind of gave you a little bit of what you were expecting from the first ones, but then it also just twisted it, and she had quite a reasonable reason to want to hunt down Sydney and kill her for murdering her son. So I always kind of like that one the best. I think that was the most shocking kind of after the original one.
I remember sort of my favourite one was, and it still was for me out on this kind of rewatching and checking them out for the first time, was just the end of sort of Scream 1. That the fact that it was like two of them, like I thought that was pretty awesome at the time as like a young kid. Like it kind of throws you think, oh my god, we finally discovered who it is. Oh, and then they sort of twist it on your head and you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Like you see it in so many horror films. You think, how does this guy or serial killer get around so often? And the fact that they had like two, I thought was such a clever play on it. But I must admit, I was really surprised how much I liked Jill Roberts sort of as Ghostface in 4. Like I was kind of like watching 4 and I was like, this movie's okay. I prefer if they maybe focused on sort of the new generation and didn't just have sort of the old gang kicking around. And it was just sort of when it was her reveal, I was like, oh, I'm all on board for this. I didn't realise this was going to be my thing. And then as sort of she had that sort of the film was like 2011, sort of social media is kind of becoming more and more prevalent in society, and it felt like that made perfect sense for someone like that to be kind of Ghostface, that she's doing all this, the serial killers, to have that fame, the attention, as she describes it, the fans. And I thought like that's something that's really unique, where sort of the other ones are looking for a bit of revenge for whatever reason, and then revenge upon revenge. I really liked sort of her modern take on it, and that the Scream series was sort of evolving with the kind of the times as well.
Yeah, I think they do a pretty good job of giving like all the killers quite a distinct motive. Like they're all kind of based around Sydney, but it's quite interesting to sort of find out the reasons why people are doing it. And even in the fourth one, when Jill's accomplice Charlie, like he's kind of got a different reason for wanting to kill people. He wants like the fame and the notoriety for murdering people, and like Jill has to murder him as well. So I thought that was pretty cool. They brought it quite up to date, like using the webcam and stuff to like secretly record all the murders. It sort of updated the technology a bit, I guess. In the first Scream, like mobile phones were pretty like up to date, and things like the killer using that as their main sort of thing to terrorize people. I get they would have to update it for the most recent one. So
I loved it in the first movie when someone went, oh, what's a guy like you doing with like a mobile telephone? And I just thought, oh my god, this film has become so dated. And I just thought that was such a little kind of throwaway line. I was like, how like time has moved on so quickly in sort of the past decade, and even 10 years after that film, that line felt so dated.
Yeah, I know, like they literally arrest Billy because he has a mobile phone on him. They're like, nope, you're definitely the killer what teenager has a mobile phone. Yeah, it doesn't it doesn't age particularly well.
One of the things that I find quite interesting, especially probably for horror fans, is the sort of the importance of the rules and sort of how they do change based on, is it a sequel, is it the end of a trilogy, is it a semi-reboot? Like, there is always kind of rules in play, and you know, they change, but as you say, they're kind of equally important. What's your take on the rules, and do you subscribe to those rules, and do you think it's something that sort of set the Scream movies apart from being slasher movies, and perhaps the geeky references is the sort of the rules of it all?
I think as a horror fan, you sort of always have this thing where you're like, oh, if there was like a zombie apocalypse, I would survive it because I know what to do. I've seen enough films, I know what's happening. And I think the rules in Scream are sort of like that. You're like, right, if people were getting murdered, like I wouldn't say I'll be right back. I wouldn't go off and have a drink or whatever. So I think I relate to how important Randy like feels they are, especially like in the first film. It's only him that's really like, these are the rules, they're really important, you need to listen. And then kind of when they prove true, people start listening to him in the other films. They become like a really key part of it all. But yeah, I think you do sort of think about those things. You think if you've seen enough horror films and you've watched enough stuff that you wouldn't do all the stupid things that people do that get them kills, like go off on their own, or go into like a dark place to have sex with your boyfriend or something, like that's just asking to get murdered. So I do think they're important, and I think it's cool that the characters are aware of that. It doesn't always help them because people are, I mean, especially like Randy, he's very aware of the rules and he still gets murdered halfway through the second film. But yeah, I think you like to think that as a horror fan you would be able to survive a situation like that because you have this superior knowledge of what's going on.
Do you think you would survive in any of the Scream movies, or do you think there's a Scream movie that you think I would have a better chance in 4 than I would 2, or a better chance in 3 than 1?
I feel like I'd have the best chance in 3 purely because there's only one killer and he wasn't like super imaginative. Like I feel like in the first Scream, Billy and Stu were so smart, like they had everything covered. If they just murdered Sydney before they told her their plan, then they probably would have got away with it, to be honest. So I think probably, yeah, everyone felt very clever and planned out, and obviously because there was 2 of them, it'd be twice as hard. So I feel like 3 would be the best one, but I hate being chased. I just totally break down at the thought of being chased by anyone, so I probably wouldn't survive purely on my ability to not be able to run anywhere.
What always annoyed me in the movie is when sort of watching one after another, but I did watch like 2 other movies sort of between 3 and 4. I had a little break. Was how many of them have an opportunity to run outside when there's the killer in the house, but they choose to run up the stairs instead. And it's like the amount of times I'm like, just run outside and you will be safe. Do not run upstairs. There seemed to be such a trend of that happening in the movies. Like, did they not learn from the rules of sort of a lot of the Halloween movies and so on?
I know, because even it especially annoys me with Sarah Michelle Gellar's character in Scream 2, Cece, because she's like outside on the phone, and there's loads of sorority houses nearby. If she just like made a run for it, she probably would have been all right. But she chooses to go back into the house and then locks herself in, and then yeah, she's just stuck. So yeah, I feel like a lot of people in Scream put the chain on the door or set an alarm or something, and then so even if they do have the sense to try and run outside, the chain usually screws them over and they just have no choice but to run upstairs.
Do you have a favourite Scream kill?
I think Sarah Michelle Gellar's one in Scream 2 is one of my favourites, even though she is a brilliant character, and I was very sad to see her die. But I think her whole like kind of phone call beforehand, and you see like the killer like creeping into the house behind her when her sorority sister's there, and you think you're like, oh, she's probably safe because someone else is in the house now. You kind of see him creeping about. I feel like Sarah Michelle Gellar gets really drawn out deaths in horror films. Like her What Did I Know What You Did Last Summer lasts a good like 10 minutes as well. She just doesn't have a good time of it. But yeah, I think it's a cool like chase, and then it's a pretty brutal just stab, and she gets thrown over the balcony, and then this awesome song by Everclear just starts. And it's always like a kind of cheery end to her death. But I quite like that one.
Are you a fan of kind of the Scream soundtracks?
I am, yeah. I sort of forgot how many good songs were on it until I was rewatching them, and then I added a few of them to Spotify. I think 1 and 2 are definitely the best. I think 2 is probably actually amazing. I remember my friend actually had like the soundtracks on CD, and we used to listen to them when I was a teenager. But I actively noted how bad the music was in Scream 4. When the credits rolled, I was like, oh my god, this is bad. So yeah, I feel like that kind of 90s like grunge and a bit of ska. I think there's like a Less Than Jake cover in Scream 2. I think that was like peak music, still is peak music for me. So
it did feel all that was missing was like a Blink-182 song
Yeah.
for like a 90s movie. Like I felt like every one of them had something at the time, but no, this one managed to pass it by.
Yeah. The couple of songs that play like over the credits in Scream 2 are just are very good. And yeah, I think the 3 and 4 kind of missed that, and probably because obviously they were a bit older. They were trying to, a bit newer. They were trying to fit in with the more modern music. But yeah, I like the kind of 90s grungy stuff, fits it a bit better.
We kind of spoke about sort of Sarah Michelle Gellar, and it seemed to have sort of casting as well that sort of reflected sort of the genre as well. You have people kind of like Sarah Michelle Gellar that's becoming a name in something like kind of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You have Courtney Cox in Friends. Like it seems to sort of tie into sort of that TV culture in a way, and I always thought it was quite clever casting who they would pick to get involved in these roles. What did you make of kind of the casting for sort of the Scream movies? Is there any sort of roles that really kind of stand out for you?
I think it was good because it's a lot of people that you just recognize, like if they're playing like really tiny roles, like in Scream 2 especially, like Joshua Jackson's in like a scene where they're in film class, and then like Rebecca Gayhart's one of the sorority sisters, and she was in like Urban Legend and stuff. And yeah, like obviously Sarah Michelle Gellar being in Buffy, it's quite cool because I think usually in slasher films the kind of background characters and the smaller characters are usually like unknown people, and you maybe don't care about them because you're like, well, they're probably going to get killed. But I think casting people like that made you like kind of more invested in their characters and made you care about them more. And yeah, like Sarah Michelle Gellar is literally in it for about 10 minutes, but she is definitely one of my favorite characters in that film. And I think they obviously kind of take the mickey out of that in Scream 4 because the opening is just like everyone who was ever in a popular TV series at that time, like all these like young women who were in like 90210 and True Blood and everything. They kind of pack them all in there. But I think yeah, it's good for helping you relate to the characters, and it's like a recognizable face.
I know, it's always one of those ones that almost feels like if you've kind of got a 90s crush that she's probably going to die within the first act of the movie. Like Sarah Michelle Gellar was like, oh, it was that moment of like she's getting the phone calls like, oh, she's done for. And then sort of Anna Paquin, I was like, when I was watching for it, I'd only ever seen the sort of the kind of the opening kind of epilogue monologue, and I was like, oh, okay, right, oh, there's Anna Paquin. Oh, she's probably going to die soon. Oh yeah, she's dead. But I just think sort of the Drew Barrymore one is just one of the ultimate kind of opening scenes of all time. And you know, you sort of, I think I always remembered as a kid sort of like the VHS and thinking, oh, that's probably Drew Barrymore on the cover, like she is the star of this movie, like. And then watching it as a kid, my mind was kind of blown that like they sort of did that switch and killed her so quickly. And I think it makes for something so iconic. It immediately sets sort of Scream apart from a lot of the movies at the time, that they could do that with a big name star, get them in for like a few days shoot, kill them off, make them kind of the star of the marketing, and then like lure you into that kind of false sense of kind of hope that they're going to make it.
I know, it's a very like psycho move to pull, like killing off your main actress. I mean, obviously Scream did it a lot quicker, but yeah, I think you probably thought she was gonna be like the main girl, and she was just gonna get like a bit terrorized. Maybe her boyfriend was gonna die, and then she was gonna kind of survive and be the main one. And it's still quite shocking when I watch it now. Like, you don't get to know much about her, but like the little bit of phone conversation she has with Ghostface before he turns a bit sinister, she just seems like really nice, and I'm always like so annoyed that she doesn't just keep running when she spots her parents. Like, she's so close every time. I'm like, you're so close, you could just, it's like, yeah, I think to feel that attached to a character that you get on screen for like 10 minutes is pretty impressive.
And one of those things that, obviously we spoke about characters there that get killed off within sort of the first 10-15 minutes. Scream is very unique, as you kind of highlighted, that it has a lot of consistent characters through the movies. We have Sidney Prescott's, we have Gale Weathers, we have Dewey. How is that for you, sort of as a horror fan, that you have sort of these consistent characters that turn up? And it seems to be sort of rare in the horror films that I've watched that you maybe get a character that's in the first two, then will vanish in sort of 3 and 4 when they're trying to do something else with their career, then they maybe come back in sort of the fifth one when the money's thrown at them. Do you think sort of that helps set Scream apart as well, sort of this consistent cast?
Yeah, I think because it's weird that I think you get the notion of like the final girl, like you get someone who maybe survives like a few films, but yeah, to have this whole group of people that survive is quite impressive. And I think it's cool to see the sort of change in their relationship, the whole way that they kind of go through from starting off like Sydney being a teenager and Dewey just kind of being her best friend's big brother, to kind of getting through when they're all adults and they're all still friends and things. I think I feel like Scream 3 is a little bit weak because it focused so much on like Gale and Dewey are the kind of the ones that are the main kind of focus, because Sydney's away living in the woods trying to avoid being murdered. I felt like it was a bit like weaker for that. I sort of wish that they had killed one of them off instead of Randy in Scream 2, because I think that like Sydney and Randy together would have been a cooler thing. But I guess I think it started off quite interesting. I think by the time you got to 4, you were kind of hoping that they might just kill off another main character, just to like mix things up a bit, because it was quite unexpected, like when they killed Randy in Scream 2, because you definitely thought he knows the rules, he's going to survive, he knows what's happening. So I think by the time they got to 4, they probably should have killed like Gale or Dewey off, just to kind of give you that another like gut punch and make it a bit more emotional. But it's it's definitely, I can't really think of another horror film where like that kind of staple group of people have survived and kept going through all of it. You think they would all be in massive amounts of therapy, the whole group of them, if it kept happening to them.
I know, you always think of what like Sydney learns about her mum per each movie, and it just seems to get worse. And you think of like her mum, oh man, that was so horrible, what happened to her? And as the series goes on, you're like, Jesus, like I'm sure at some point we're going to get a kind of a Scream prequel series all about Sydney's mum and her exploits. Yeah, I know, it's because she's just kind of casually mentioned throughout the first one and until like the ending, and then the third one especially is just like, all right, okay. One thing I'm curious about as well is sort of the legacy of the Scream movies. What do you think they are? Because I don't know, I felt a little bit on sort of repeat viewing that sort of some of the characters were a little bit tainted by things like kind of Scary Movie, and sort of that reputation managed to sort of linger a little bit with it. What's kind of the legacy for you? I don't know when you sort of last maybe watched the Scream movies, but has it kind of changed for you over the years, and what do you think it says about films nowadays? I think you're kind of right about Scary Movie. I think it particularly Dewey's representation in Scary Movie isn't very flattering, and I always kind of think of that. There's the bit where the killer like phones Sydney when she's staying over at Dewey's house, and
and in the Scary Movie he comes out with like a Hoover and he's like, don't knock on my room when I'm in here. That always makes me laugh, and then I always kind of forget that doesn't actually happen in the Scream films. But I think, like, I feel like that's kind of only with the first one. I think they managed to create like a lot of quite like iconic characters. I think especially the sort of the main group of people. Like I think Sydney, for being a final girl, she never sort of takes anything from anyone. Like she is always fighting back. Like right at the first time sort of Ghostface calls her, she's just like not taking his nonsense. She's like, yeah, you're not here. If you're here, what am I doing? And then she just kind of beats the crap out of him when he tries to attack her and stuff. And even in the later films, I always think like her kind of speech when she's like facing off with the killer, she's never, I mean, you can tell she's scared, but she just like never backs down. And by the time the fourth one comes along, she's just like running into houses when people are getting murdered, trying to save people. I think she is like a whole kind of different breed of final girl. She just never really backed down. She gets stabbed and shot and everything, and she's just like always there ready to fight someone else. So I think that probably helped the sort of representation of like final girls in horror films. They're not always like terrified and running away and getting rescued by someone else. I think Sydney must have a higher murder count than any of the killers in Scream by this point, the amount of people that she's shot in the head.
Where do you think she kind of lies compared to sort of some of the other famous kind of scream queens in sort of the horror genre? Is Sydney one of the kind of the all-time greats, or is there someone that you have a bit of a stronger preference for?
I think I feel like I have a bit of a stronger preference from Laurie Strode from Halloween, because I mean, her timeline's been messed with a few times with all the new films coming out, but she as well, like, never, like, she kind of never, she's always ready for Michael if he's like gonna turn up, and she's never really like afraid to run away, and she just always like goes after him. And I mean, she's got a harder job because he literally doesn't die, but like right up until again, timeline dependent, but up until like Resurrection, she's in a state hospital, and she's still like constructing traps in case he comes for her, and she like almost gets him, but and then in the new one, she's got her whole like house booby trap. She's like trained her daughter on what happens if he comes back and stuff. Like, she is just focused and ready to take him on, even though he is, I would say he's scarier than the Scream people, because he just does not die.
And kind of finally, it's always the classic horror thing or movie thing to do. How would you rank the Scream movies?
For me, Scream 2 has always been my favourite, and I'm not really sure why. I think it's more like a tint of nostalgia, because when I watch them back all in a row, there's nothing wrong that I can find with Scream 1, whereas there are bits of Scream 2 that I'm a bit like, not too sure about that. But I think just the sheer amount of times that I watched Scream 2 as a teenager, me and my friend used to watch it like every single weekend. We could quote entire sections of that film, and we frequently did. So I always feel like that one is my favourite. Scream 1 is a very, very close second, because it's just like almost perfect. It's scary and it's funny, and I still think it's scary now. It's really tense, like all the chase sequences and stuff. I would say Scream 4 is next, because it's not, I don't feel it's like a perfect Scream film, but I think it was like as good an attempt. And like you said, I liked the whole like kind of bringing it up to date. I liked the introduction of a new group of friends that you cared about again, and I loved Kirby as like a Randy replacement, especially because she was a girl as well, like super into horror. I really loved that. Scream 3 has definitely got to be the worst. It is so far down. I think I watched that a lot as a teenager as well, and I don't think until I watched them all in a chunk I realised like how bad it is. I forgot that they had a voice changer that can just steal anyone's voice. I forgot that Sydney's mum keeps appearing to her as like a dead ghost, like under a sheet. I think I just blocked out all the really bad bits from it, and the third one is just awful. So it is way down, as far down as you could get, and the other three are pretty close together at the top.
You were saying you could quote kind of Scream 2. What is your favourite quote from Scream 2 that you drop into? Like, I don't know, you're probably the same as me. There's like random movie quotes that are so obtuse that you can just drop into everyday conversation and people will not even recognise it. Have you got one of those ones for sort of any of the Scream films?
There's the scene where Randy and Dewey are discussing the rules of a sequel, and they're talking about who the killer could be, and Randy says it could be Sydney's best friend, and Dewey's like, but you know, serial killers are typically white males, and Randy's like, that's why it's perfect. It's sort of against the rules, but not really. Mrs. Voorhees was a terrific serial killer, and there's always room for Candyman's daughter. She's sweet, she's deadly, she's bad for your teeth. And I think anytime anyone ever mentions Candyman in my presence, they get that quote, because it's just like, yeah, and it doesn't fit in a lot of conversations, and you're right, everyone looks at me like I am insane, but yeah, that's my favourite one.
I'm pretty much aligned with you sort of with the rankings. I would have to have Scream 1 sort of top of the pile. I just still think like it holds up. I think it is one of the kind of the all-time classics.
Yeah.
I think 2 is really enjoyable. I think it just falls a little part towards sort of the end. 4, it was okay, but then that last stretch, I think, when Emma Roberts goes like completely wacko, I was just like, yeah, I'm all on board for this. And then the third one, I was just like, this is just really poor. I just didn't enjoy it at all. And yeah, I thought sort of a movie like that would be pretty good for sort of references to, you know, many failed trilogies, and sort of the last one kind of falling a little bit short. I think this one fell into that trap. I somewhat suspect it didn't mean to, but I just didn't think is that great a movie. But you know, I almost think of sort of 4 is you could probably discount 3 ever existing, and then you could sort of do 1, 2, 4, and then you've sort of got the Kevin Williamson or whatever it is. You have like a trilogy of films that have been written by him. I know there was some sort of work done to his script, but you could sort of consider that a trilogy and sort of a course correction from him to sort of some of the mistakes they made in number 4.
Yeah, I really, it annoys me as well that I feel like the third one kind of taints the first one, because the killer Roman's like, oh, I came to town and showed Billy the tape of your mum and his dad, and that's what made him a serial killer. Like, that annoys me as well, because I'm like, not only is this a rubbish film, but you're also trying to like tie it back to the original and not just give them the credit they deserved for being really smart killers. So yeah, it annoys me on many levels. So I would quite happily cut that one. I don't think anything good happens in that apart from Randy's tiny videotape segment. Is the only bit I like.
Yeah, I was glad when he managed to come back and he sort of preempted that he was going to die. I thought, yeah, I was so glad he got a full trilogy worth of appearances.
Though he's never on any posters. Like, people who die in the first 5 minutes of Scream are on the posters, and Jamie Kennedy was on none of the posters for the Scream films, which I think is a travesty.
A disgrace. So have you kind of got any final thoughts on sort of the Scream movies?
I think I always feel like it's quite easy to discount like all these kind of teeny slashers that came out at the time, and like maybe people don't think they kind of stand up as well as some of the older classic stuff. But yeah, I would say if you haven't seen them, which I would highly recommend going and watching them, and yeah, I would say watch 1, 2 and 4. I think it's quite impressive that out of a batch they've only really had one bad sequel, because like I'm a massive fan of like Halloween and Friday the 13th, and I'll quite happily be like, oh, the first couple are good, maybe the middle ones aren't that amazing, but I'll still watch them. But I think like Scream did pretty well in having 3 like actively really good films. And I think if you're remotely into horror, they are massive fun to watch, to try and get all the references. My favourite one is Wes Craven in the first film being dressed in a Freddy Krueger sweater, in a Freddy Krueger hat, playing a janitor named Fred, which I always like when that happens.
And kind of my final thought is, like, one thing I always think is a slight regret of the movies is they always talk about how, like, you've definitely got to make sure that Ghostface is killed, and sometimes the only way to do that is to blow them up or freeze them to death or something like that. I always wish they had some sort of more outlandish deaths for Ghostface, that they'd sort of followed through with some of their previous other horror kind of genre tropes for how you kill the unkillable. And it's always like, oh yeah, stabbed or shot. I did like that they electrocuted Jill Roberts. That I thought that was quite a cool one. But I just wish they had maybe a more outlandish killer too in there.
Yeah, I think like Stu in the first one gets quite a good one with a TV on his head. And then, yeah, Jill getting the defibrillator. Though that happens in another film. I think it's maybe the Black Christmas remake. Someone else definitely gets defibrillated in the head. But yeah, everyone just... And usually, like, one of the killers takes out their partner in the Scream films anyway, because they're portraying them. So, yeah, something a bit more fun might be quite good. But I do enjoy the TV on the head electrocution.
Like, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about the Scream film. So we're actually going to come back next week to sort of talk about sort of the post-Scream slasher. Do you want to reveal to people what movies we're going to be watching next week in case they want to watch along at home or check out these movies on Netflix?
So the ones I thought I would focus on are Halloween, H2O, Cherry Falls, Urban Legend, Valentine, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, which... were all films I just had in my DVD collection because that's how much I love them. So
yeah, I've watched 2 of them so far. I've watched Valentine and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I must say Valentine was a pretty terrible movie, but I have a lot of good things to say about the gender politics of that movie, so okay. I look forward to chatting about that one with you next week. So if you mentioned sort of you've written for a few different places, if anyone wanted to kind of reach out to you on like Twitter or whatever and find out about what you're writing, what you're watching, where could kind of people find all those things?
I think I'm at Wicked Sister 69 on everything, which is a poor screen name choice when I was 15, and now I'm stuck with it. But if you follow me on Twitter, I usually post about kind of everything I'm writing. I do like a monthly column which pits like horror originals against their remakes, so I'm always open to suggestions of what people think I should write about as well. So yeah, I would say Twitter is probably the best place to get me and see what I'm writing about.
Yeah, and you can find me on Twitter at Lee_Nostromo, and definitely check out Kim's writing. I can't remember the name of the film, but what it was like you'd written about sort of periods in movies and sort of how it tied in, and I was quite impressed how many movies have sort of gone down that road. I thought that was a really good bit of writing. Yeah, it was it's Ginger Snaps, which is they sort of use werewolf mythology to represent the menstrual cycle, which is it was always a good horror film to watch when I was a teenager because it's cool because it has werewolves and stuff in it, but anytime I showed it to any male friends it was grossed them out on another level, so it was always fun for that reaction. This almost ties in perfectly as well, and obviously Dallas isn't here, but we're going to continue our trend of picking a film directed by women for the 52 Films by Women pledge. So Kim, what kind of movie directed by a female talent have you gone for this week? So I thought I would go for something that I watched repetitively as a teenager as well. So I picked The Virgin Suicides, which is directed by Sofia Coppola. And it's a story of like these 5 sisters, and they have really conservative parents. And when their youngest sister commits suicide, they sort of start challenging their parents a bit, and then their parents just kind of shut them down. And it's told from the point of view of like all the boys who lived in the street with them when they were growing up. They're sort of reminiscing about it all as adults, and I just used to watch this all the time as a teenager. I loved it. I've gone for a horror movie in tribute to yourself, and I've gone for the movie Raw. I don't know if you've seen this one. I haven't, but I have had so many people tell me that I should watch it, but I'm not super good on
really gory stuff. So, but so many people have told me to watch it now. I have to check it out.
Yeah, it's right up your street. So it's directed by Julia. I'm going to murder this one. Docarunau. Oh God, I'm terrible at pronouncing last names. It's directed by a woman called Julia. It's one of these kind of movies that I absolutely loved, and sort of it is about that kind of vegetarian that goes to veterinary school, and sort of her exposure to meat brings out a very primal sort of side of her as she sort of begins to sort of discover herself as a woman. And it's I think it's a fantastic film to watch. I've watched it a couple of times now, and the experience in the cinema was very uncomfortable, to say the least. And I think it's really as well worth watching, and probably one of the scariest uses of scissors I've ever seen in a kind of feature film. So I don't know if that scene's ever been spoiled for you, Kim.
No, it hasn't. No.
Oh well, I wish you all the best with this film. I think it can be found on Netflix or Amazon Prime, so
Cool.
well worth checking out.
Awesome.
Cool. So hopefully you will all join us again next week, sort of as we go into the post-slasher period. And thanks again for everyone for listening. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.